Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to another episode of On the Couch. I say good morning if you're in the UK, or good afternoon, good evening if you're anywhere else in the world. This is Creatives, the podcast for creative professionals everywhere. We're part of the Creative Group, the premier network for creative professionals to help support, connect and grow your creative business. I'm Melanie Perry.
I'm Julie Hyde-Mew.
This is On the Couch. And Julie, who do we have with us today?
And we have Chris Pickles. Hello, Chris.
Hi there.
So nice for you to join us. Wow. Well,
Nice to see you both.
I've been looking at your CV and I'm just blown away. Chris is an actor, a theatre director, producer, writer. You've had the most impressive career, Chris, and obviously it's not yet over because you're still breathing, but you've had a wonderful career in the theatre, in the UK, you've toured in the Middle East, in Australia, in the United States. You've worked in so many theatres, so many opera houses, on so many productions that even if I started listing them, it would take an hour. So in just a few words, how would you describe your career?
It's been impulsive. It's been a career that's taken me places rather than I've guided it, really. I suppose I have guided it, but it's a lot of what's happened to me in my working life has been things that have happened fortuitously, or roads that I've gone down without even sort of imagining that's where I was going. It's been an interesting career.
When you work in television and the film world and the theatre world, it's basically organic, isn't it? You get one foot in the door and then that gets you through another door and then that gets you up one rung of the ladder. Has that been your progression, have you found?
Yes, absolutely. I've sort of been, I've found myself doing something which has led to something else, which has led to something else. And I think I've always not been afraid to go down those paths that I wasn't expecting to. So I've never played it safe necessarily. And therefore I feel that I've had a career that's, for me, being interesting and exciting, and not predictable.
We had another guest on who has gone down a similar path, and he attributes the fact that he's had all these wonderful experiences because he said yes to a lot of things. He said, I'm somebody that says yes and sees where it will take me. So would you say that that's you, that you just, people come to you with an opportunity, you say yes, see where it goes?
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes against advice. You know, you'd be, agents or something would be advising you, oh, I think you might need to focus here, or, not shoot off in this direction or that direction. But if it's something that I've thought was exciting or interesting, or most importantly, if it was something that I was going to learn something from, then I'm going to say yes to it. See, I never trained. I didn't actually go to drama college or that. I went into the theatre because I wanted to, but I hadn't trained. So I went into the theatre looking to learn, about things. So I've never stopped with that attitude, really. I've always sort of found that it's about learning something new. So I learned my craft on the job, and always was willing to say yes to another offer if I was learning something from it.
I think that's a tremendous way to be. I must admit, I'm the same. I'm a serial learner, and a lot of what I've done has come through just saying yes and getting experience, like you said, experience. And if it's something that I've gone down the route and thought, oh, this doesn't feel quite right, then you come away from it. But you learn so much, and you have a ball a lot of the time, because, as you say, it can take you in completely unexpected directions, and you come away thinking, I never thought I'd do that.
Yeah, and you're quite right. You learn what isn't right for you. And I found, for example, of a lot of the things that I've done in my career, I think the job that I least enjoy is actually producing. particularly the type of producing which involves a lot of sitting behind a desk and dealing with problems on the telephone. I'm a sort of up and doer rather than that sort of person, and therefore I have done a lot of producing in my time, but I've not enjoyed it as much as other things.
But you started off as an actor, didn't you?
I did, yes. Well, I started off as a musician. What I did train as was a musician. So I did a Bachelor of Music degree, then I did an MA in Renaissance and Baroque music. But I'd always wanted to be in the theatre. So after I'd done my degrees, I sort of went down to London, and within a year or two, I'd quit my music teaching job. And was in the theatre, but I got into the theatre through my music skills. So that was a great asset at the beginning of my career, because I was I was very useful to a company. With a company, I could arrange stuff, write stuff, musical direct, sort of. So I brought skills other than acting to the job, and then I learned the acting job as I went along.
Well, certainly with the kind of music you specialized in, you must have been a great asset for all the Shakespeare productions you've acted in, produced, directed.
Yes, you'd think so. Funnily enough, I actually work with a composer and a musical director with the Shakespeare plays that I've directed over the last 20 years. I've worked with a musical director called Paul Knight, and so I actually was at music college with him, but he handles all that now, and I focus on the other stuff. So we're a sort of team. But initially in my career, yes, I was able to, with all that music thing, I was able to contribute to a company with that. Yeah.
So how do you start off? You decide, right, I'm going to do Much Ado About Nothing, and then you get a cast together, you rehearse in a barn somewhere, and then you tour all over the world, and you're in the Sydney Opera House and the Met. And, how does it all work?
Well, no, but the last 20 years have been a lot of Shakespeare, but previous to that, because of my musical background, I was working a lot in opera. So I worked at the Royal Opera House, and I worked at Sydney Opera House as a resident director and as an assistant director, and it was part of me learning my craft as a director, really. Nowadays, I sort of moved away from opera and got into Shakespeare. Nowadays, I'm a sort of director for hire for Shakespeare. It seems Shakespeare most of the time, and it's people come to me and say, we're doing we want to do a production of a Shakespeare play. Would you like to direct it? And then I go into discussion with the producers. So what play should we do? What would we looking at? What's our audience? Where are we going? What play might be suitable? And so it sort of develops from there. So it comes to me perhaps without a particular play attached, and then we decide this is the play we're going to do. Then we decide, okay, and now we're going to cast it, and etc. Off we go from there.
What has been if you can pick one, this is probably a horrid question, but what has been your favorite production that you've worked on?
Oh, I suppose I couldn't say one production. That would be really difficult, but I tell you what, doing as an assistant director in Sydney at the Opera House, directing Joan Sutherland in an opera. I think that was one of the highlights of my career. She was such a wonderful woman. a great artist, and such joy to work with. And it was a fabulous opera house in a fabulous city. I had a wonderful time on that, working with assisting a brilliant director called Christopher Renshaw, who taught me a huge amount as a youngster sort of going into the profession.
And you've obviously worked with many other famous Shakespearean actors.
Yes, I suppose also the best 3 years of my life were working with Kenneth Branagh and his Renaissance Theatre Company, where had a wonderful time there, where we all sort of mucked in doing all sorts of jobs, producing the films, you know, including Much Ado About Nothing, and tours of plays such as Uncle Vanya with Richard Briers, etc. Working with people like, you know, Judi Dench doing and Kenneth Branagh doing Coriolanus at Chichester. I think that 3 years was a wonderful time. I really enjoyed the sort of the fun and the joy of theatre again. I went in my 40s, getting slightly jaded of, you know, a little bit with my work, and going into that company completely revitalized and renewed my passion for what I was doing.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
What are you working on now, Chris? Because I know that you go in to rehearsals in September. Tell us about the production you're working on now.
Yes, I'm doing a production of Othello, which I've just finished casting, and we're going to Rome to do that. We rehearse in the UK this September, and then we're off to Rome at the end of September to the Globe Theatre in Rome. In the Borghese Gardens in Rome, there is a replica of Shakespeare's Globe Theatre, just the same as in the South Bank in London, and they do Shakespeare in Italian for the whole season. And then Bedouin Theatre Shakespeare Company, which is the company I'm working with at the moment, go in at the end of the season and do a production in English. So that's what we're doing, and yeah, just finished casting it.
Some exciting names, old ones, new ones?
New ones, new people, people who I've worked with in the past. It's the 10-year anniversary of Bedouin Shakespeare Company, and I've done, I think, 6 or 7 productions with them over those 10 years. So I've got together a group of people who've worked with the company before to celebrate the 10 years. But also introducing some new actors rather than the older, more experienced actors. But we've put together a company of, you know, not all recently graduated, but graduated perhaps in the last 5-6 years. Yeah, and
now the reason why I connected with you, Chris, was because I saw something you posted on Facebook, and I could feel the frustration when it came to casting actors for a play. And basically you put out a list of what actors should do when it comes to putting a show reel together, the do's and the don'ts. And you sounded a bit frustrated because actors seem to be making the same mistakes over and over again, and you wrote out the most amazing list of how to put a show reel together, which was really impressive. Could you just run down the, down the list for us, and so that people out there who are actors can understand what to do and what not to do?
Yes, what we'd done with casting Othello is we'd opened it up to more inexperienced actors, perhaps actors who didn't have an agent, by getting the first round of auditions to be on self-tape. So sending the actors out with a speech to prepare for the character that they were auditioning for, and putting it down on tape and then sending it to us. And that way, the producers and I and the musical director Paul got to see more people for those roles. So we sat down for a day and watched a couple of hundred self-tape, so actors doing one speech. That's far more than we could have seen if we'd have done in the room auditions. We wouldn't have been able to see that number of people. But time and time again, people were making the mistakes. One of the principal things that they were doing was they were not taking account of the instructions that had been sent to them, you know, in what we were looking for. So for example, you know, I'd ask the actors to do a mid shot or a full length shot, because I wanted to see them, a lot of the body working. And so many of them, I also wanted them to be at a distance from the microphone, because the Globe Theatre in Rome is a big, you know, just like the Globe Theatre on the South Bank is a big open air theatre. And you need to have a vocal presence there. And so many of the actors were doing, in their self-tapes, they were doing close-up camera work. They were whispering into the microphone, so we couldn't tell what was going on with their voices. So they shot themselves in the foot on that way, because we couldn't risk seeing them on an in-the-room one. So we were looking at that. So many of the actors didn't prepare properly, in that they didn't learn the speech, and therefore they couldn't properly play, you know, to the camera. They kept having to look down at their speech, and it kept sort of destroying what they were trying to do as actors. Some of the actors didn't do the speech we sent them. For some reason, they decided, probably because it's one they'd already learned, they decided to do another speech. And I'd specifically chosen those speeches for the actors to do because I wanted to see how they tackled specific challenges. And therefore they did another speech, and therefore they didn't tackle that challenge that I needed to see them tackle. It was things like that, but it was also about eyeline. You know, for example, when you're doing a speech in a self-tape, do you play direct to camera and like that, or do you play slightly away from camera? Do you play that way or that way? You know, what are the demands of the speech, and taking those into account. So I was discussing things like that, really.
I saw that post, and I have to say it kind of horrified me a little bit, because with the things that you're discussing and the things you've just talked about now, you know, if you're an actor, the one thing that you need to do, in my opinion, I mean, I'm not a professional in your caliber director, but you need to take direction as an actor. You know, you're given a set of instructions, whether you are a film actor or a stage actor, and you are told quite specifically what you need to do, where you need to be, how you need to sound, and some of the things that you were saying, this is basic stuff. Now, if a director sends you a script and says, you learn this and this is what I need, who in God's name sends you a different speech? You know, I was like, really? Did he really see that?
Yeah, I know.
You know, I was quite shocked.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. You really would. Sometimes I know. Sometimes it can be. I know, because this has happened to actors that personally I know about. Sometimes agents can be not very good at passing the right information on. You know, you have to trust the agent so much in this in the process of auditioning. You've got to trust the agent that they're going to get the right information and all the information to the, you know, to the actor. Otherwise, it's the actor that looks, you know, silly at the end of the day. But it could be, you know, the agent's fault, who, as we know, are very busy, and, you know, and all that, and it's very easy for a piece of paper or a file, an email to go missing or whatever. But you'd be surprised how
diligence, isn't it? And I mean, if you're representing an agent, in my view, it's just sloppy. You know, if you're representing somebody, you know, you don't want the actors you're representing to look bad, surely, because actually it's not just the actor's reputation that then goes down the toilet, it's yours as well.
Yeah.
So come on, guys.
Out of the 200 show reels that you watched, how many did you discard because they didn't give you what you wanted or what you asked for?
Well, I never ever would say, and me personally, I always give the benefit of the doubt. If the actor's done something silly, but I see something there as a possibility, then I'll fight for that actor to come and see me in the room. But it is very hard sometimes. You think this actor just doesn't care. You know, they've just not done what we've asked, and they don't care. So why should I care?
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah, but it is.
It's very sad.
It is. And as you say, I mean, all things being equal, if they have got the information, it's a respect thing, I think, a little bit as well. You know, I mean, you're a very big name, and if you're called to do something, or you're auditioning for a part that is really important with, you know, directors who are big names, who work with big names themselves, it's a respect thing. You don't want to turn in not your best work, and not turn in something that is completely the opposite of what's been asked for. It's alien to me. It'd be like me applying for a job with a completely different CV. You know, I'm a secretary, but I'm going to apply to be a pilot.
well, that's the other thing as well. You see, I mean, because of the way I work, and there's a lot of music in the shows, the Shakespeare that I direct. I particularly ask for highly skilled singers or musicians, highly skilled. And you'll be surprised the number of submissions that we get from people who have no singing or no musicianship skills at all. You know, and I can't do that to the musical director. I can't cast actors in a play who can't do what the musical director is going to want them to do. So it's not worth submitting yourself for thinking, well, I'm a good actor, it'll do, or on the off chance. You know, you need to be able to provide the skills that are required for the audition as well. Absolutely.
And music is quite technical. It really is. I mean, I love music. I love listening to all pieces of music, but if somebody talks to me in musical technical terms, it's like a foreign language. And I learned this when we produced our film Scooch, didn't we, Julie? And I had a young music producer who did all of our musical score for us, and he was exceptional, and he was very, very precise, and he was talking to me in musical language, and I was like, I haven't got a clue what you're talking about. All I want, Aaron, is it's got to sound like this. And it was the loosest possible brief, and he was
he had the vaguest of debriefs.
Yeah,
he really came up trumps.
But he did, he did. I mean, he's something special, that guy. But it is, if you don't understand what they're talking about, it is a problem. It's a problem.
Well, we made it easy for people with Othello. We made it easy. We sent everybody the sheet music for the Ash Grove, the folk song, and said, sing the Ash Grove. Here's the music. These are the words. And we had people singing Green Sleeves. We had people singing a pop song. We had all sorts of things. And the musical director again had chosen that specific song because it showed off what he needed to know about them as singers. So they chose to do not the Ash Grove, another song. It doesn't help you get the job.
No, it's a bit like Joey in Friends. You know, he said he could play the guitar, he could ride a horse, he could dance, he could speak Italiano. And of course, he went for roles that he just couldn't fill.
Yeah. You know, I think that's a big lesson here for anybody watching this session today. You know, if you're an actor and you have been tasked with a particular song, or a singer, and you've been tasked with a particular song or particular script, do that thing, because as you said, they are looking for your tone of voice. They're looking to see how you perform, and there's lots of different things that these guys are going to be looking for. Don't do something different. You might prefer a song, don't do something different. They're not looking for that. They are looking for the specific technicalities of, can you cope with what they're asking you to do? And if you do something different, you'll never know.
Yeah, because we can't in the cast breakdown, in the breakdowns, we can't explain why we're asking all this. You know, it would overwhelm us with paper or whatever. So it's just assume there's a very good reason why this is being asked for, and go with that.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't ask for it otherwise.
What?
You wouldn't ask for it otherwise.
No,
there's a reason.
No, and particularly with Shakespeare, don't paraphrase.
Oh my word, you have to be word perfect, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely, yes, because if you don't know it, there's at least 200 people out front who do.
So besides show reels, because obviously it's the way it's going now, it's easier for directors and producers and actors in the whole casting, auditioning and casting process nowadays to just do show reels. So besides the show reels, what other top tips have you got for actors when it comes to presenting themselves for roles?
Yes, so one of I think the important things, and it sounds obvious, is apply for roles that you're right for, that you've got the skills for. You know, what I'm saying is, don't apply thinking that some of the requests for certain skills aren't going to be important. They are. If you can play the guitar, then apply for a role that requires a guitarist or whatever. But if you can't play the guitar, don't apply for that role. I think also you've got to think seriously about, if you're going to get a role, are you within the basic parameters, age, etc. You know, sort of go for roles that you're right for, and then you've got a chance of getting them. I think the other thing I would say is always prepare. Never try and wing an audition. It's always obvious the actors who've really put in the work and are working with detail and working with imagination and working with confidence on a scene or a speech or whatever. If it doesn't say learn whatever sides or scene or whatever you've been sent, don't take that as an excuse not to learn it. I would, wherever you get the opportunity, learn the text so that you can freely work with the other actors in the audition or the camera or whatever it might be, and it'll give you that bit more confident to be able to experiment and play. So always, wherever you can, learn it. I know sometimes it's difficult because, you know, you get scenes at very short notice these days, which is, you know, can be absolutely ridiculous. But prepare where you can, and do a bit of research. Who am I auditioning for? You know, what are their likes, dislikes, whatever. You know, is there anything that can help me get this gig, you know, by knowing a bit more about the company I'm auditioning for or whatever. So do a bit of research as well. And I think the other thing that I'd say is, whether it's a self-tape or whether particularly in the room auditions, be yourself and own the room. I don't mean come in and do cartwheels or whatever.
No.
I mean, bring your natural energy. Hopefully it's not too manic depressive or whatever, but bring your natural confident energy to the room. When you come in, the way you introduce yourself, the way you say, hi, I'm Chris Pickles, or, you know, hello, my name's, you know, whatever you want to do, make a mark on the room without sort of bringing an atomic bomb in there, and own that room. You don't have to be overexcitable with all that fake energy. You can be quiet and gentle and sensitive, and that's bringing you to the room. And then you'll be something completely different when you do the acting bit of the audition as well. But be relaxed and you in that room.
We have a voice coach in Australia who's a member of Creatives, Donald Woodburn, and in his interview, when we interviewed him, he made that point as well, didn't he, Melanie? Yeah. That you cannot sound natural if you're not, you're not in your voice, you're not using your whole body.
Yeah.
And be normal.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is being normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if normal for you is dark and dangerous, and that's not what's wanted, then you have to find the other side of you, which isn't that dark and dangerous, which is more smiley and whatever, but it's got to still be you. It's got to be authentic. Yes, and quite right, contact with your voice and contact, happy in your skin, in your body, and is all important. I think that the nerves that people have are the thing that gets in the way so often.
And I think
So
some of that helps with preparation, though, isn't it? And there's a coach that I'm a business coach I'm very friendly with, and she always says that confidence comes from competence. And if you are really prepared and you've done your research and on the production team and the role, and you are thoroughly, you've given it all you can. Yes, a lot of actors, they're still going to be slightly nervous, but I think if you've prepared as well as you can, that takes the edge off a little bit. It's if you try and go in and wing it or do something that that you haven't really put the work in, I think the nerves will get the better of you.
Yeah. And it's a little thing, and I know some people will disagree with this, but never come into the audition and make an excuse. The number of actors who walk in and one of the first things they say is sorry. Sorry that I'm not able to do this off book. Sorry I've got a cold, or I'm just getting over a cold, or sorry. It really is a downer. It's not good. Just try and avoid apologizing. Come in and say, I'm here and this is where I am at the moment, lurgy and everything, and whatever, but don't apologize. Yeah,
agree with that. And what would your three top tips, if you have any, for anybody watching this who is wanting to develop their director producer type of career?
If you're wanting to be a director, and this is a hard one because I think everybody's journey is different, but I think one of the important things is you must be prepared to generate your own work. Don't expect the work to come to you. You need to take you to the work. Find the plays or the musicals or the operas or whatever it is that you want to tackle in your career, that you'd like to tackle. Find the actors that you'd like to work with, and then take perhaps a package to producers or whatever and say, I've got this play that I'd like to do, and I've got this actor interested, etc. You've got to be proactive, very, very importantly, and be prepared to assist. And I know I say this because assisting was one of my ways through to getting the career that I wanted. But I think you learn so much by assisting other directors and producers. You see what works and you see what doesn't. And I think it really helps. It certainly helped me to work for another person's visage of imagining of a play and an opera. So what you're doing as an assistant is actually helping somebody else to get the production that they're after, and that's really good for helping you assess what should be going on in a production or whatever. You learn what works and what doesn't by observing. As an assistant, you can see it happening in front of you. Sometimes you're called upon to put it right or whatever, but you can see what's going on so much by observing. I learned a lot by observing some very famous and influential directors, and of those famous and influential directors, I learned a lot of things that one shouldn't do with actors.
Mm. Who influenced you the most?
Sorry, Melanie.
Who influenced you the most that you've worked with, would you say?
Well, I think I think I've already mentioned him. Christopher Renshaw was one of the people early in my career who really sort of helped me understand the basics of what directing was. Christopher Renshaw, who was the originator of We Will Rock You, etc., and he and I both did Taboo, Boy George's Taboo together in the West End, and I think I learned a huge amount from him about what you should do and what also was difficult about directing. What was important that I learned from Christopher was that you've got to be careful about, as a director, about making the production about, it is about you, but it's not about your failings or whatever. What Chris would go into rehearsal every day and be mortified if rehearsals hadn't gone well. And actually the reason why they hadn't gone well was the leading actor or actress was having a bad day and it was just impossible to deal with him or her or whatever. But he would take it so personally. And I learned that actually directing is about helping other people to do their job rather than worrying about the job that you're trying to do. And I think that's the other thing I'd say about starting a career in directing is be prepared to not impose yourself as a director on the production, but be prepared to be the person supporting and helping the actors explore what the piece is about. So it's make sure it's not about you. Does that make sense?
It does, and it's really lovely. And I think that the best productions work with the supportive executive team. You know, shouting and screaming and ruling by fear doesn't get the results that you want. And some of the best productions and film and TV productions that I've seen, Ozark, I don't know if anyone's seen Ozark, is a prime example where the production crew were so fantastic with from everybody, from the actors down to the van drivers who bought the buns and the catering, you know, and there was a real family feeling of it. As a result, they're winning Emmys left, right and centre because it just, the whole thing really worked and it really came across. And I think that banishing that kind of ego in the business needs to happen a little bit, because you can get so much more out of your production crew if you're all working as a team together in a supportive role rather than a you'll do it because I said so. Yeah.
So you're not a tyrant. You're saying you don't go around screaming and shouting, Chris?
No, I'm not.
The best out of your actors being kind and supportive?
I'm not a tyrant at all. No, I found, having dealt with tyrants, I know that that's not for me. Difficult in this business, difficult people, whether they're directors or whether they're actors, that difficulty always comes from insecurity. And I am as insecure as anybody else, but I don't wish to demonstrate my insecurity by screaming my head off all the time, you know. And I try to be a calm, strong center for a production, a dependable person rather than the firework that might go off or might not go off.
Yeah.
And I'd rather it's about communication.
Yeah.
Well, I've worked in television all my life, and I've certainly noticed that the more you shout and scream at a production crew, the more frazzled they get.
Yeah.
The more they start falling apart.
Yeah.
And the worst, you can get the worst out of them. Whereas if you, as you say, you're the calm eye of the storm,
Yeah.
you calm everybody down, they're more productive, they're more focused.
And more loyal.
So it's very counterproductive to be a tyrant when you're in that kind of role.
Yeah.
Well, any role, any executive role, I've seen it in business, coming from a corporate background back in the day. You know, if you lead by fear, you don't get the best out of your teams. It's the good communicators, the people who have the best leaders are the ones that have the best people skills.
Yeah.
And know the best people around them and know how to get the best out of those people, not the people who yell and scream and do it by fear.
Yeah. And quite honestly, I learn more about the work that we're doing. I learn more about the play or the opera or whatever that I'm directing by having a dialogue going on. You know, I don't come in and say, right, this play is this, and this is what we're going to do. I have a vision for what we're doing, but that vision is a flexible and open, and I'm not imposing that vision, but that's what the parameters within which we're exploring in rehearsal. And I learn, because it's a give and take, I learn from the actors as much about the play as I knew before we started rehearsals. You know, and so we can discover so much if we've got the right dialogue going in the rehearsal room. And it's not a sign of weakness.
No.
And you're into now passing on your knowledge and your expertise, and you're writing, you're teaching, and you're also writing 2 books, I think, An Actor's Approach to Text and the Shakespeare Soliloquy, a resource for actors.
Yes.
So you're passing on all your experience, your expertise, your knowledge.
All the way through my working the theatre and television, it's all the work that I've been doing parallel. I've always taught in drama schools as well, and so it's second nature to me to have that sort of side of my head going. So yes, over the COVID time and when, you know, theatres sort of stopped going, I was gonna keep going myself by writing and nearly completing these books. Yes.
Oh, good for you. I hope you're going to tell us when they are published.
I certainly will. Yes, we are yet without a date, but we'll see.
Well, we'll keep our eyes open for that. We've got about 5 minutes of the show left. Can you believe that's gone so quickly? And we're going to just play our little values jam game now. I don't know whether Julie has told you about this, Chris.
No.
I like to spring it on them.
It's my favourite bit. Oh, I won't do it. A friend of mine is in business development, and she's created a company with her partner called Values Jam, and that was based around music and sort of, you know, jamming sessions. And these cards have got written on them all different values, because she found in the business world that people find it really hard to talk about their values, but when your values aren't aligned, you know, with your employers, companies, it doesn't really go well if you're not in alignment with the things that are important to you as a person and important to you as a business. So she made these lovely playing cards, and they're so soft. Every time I get them out, I get quite gooey. Julie hates it, but everyone, oh, my cards.
I always roll my eyes.
I know, but they're soft and silky, and they're just so lovely to touch, and I get quite emotional when I get my cards out. But I'll stop now because Julie doesn't like it. Right, so I'll just give them a shuffle, and then what we'll do is I will see if I can hold them up, and I'm going to run my finger along the cards, and when you say stop, Chris, we'll stop and we'll see what card you picked.
Stop.
All right, let's have a look. Oh, okay, we have got the card of fulfillment. Right. So we have quite creative questions around these values. So we're going to ask you, what Chris, does fulfillment mean to you? What does it look, feel, or and sound like?
Being in an audience, standing at the back in an audience of a play that I've directed, where you can palpably feel an amazing electricity happening between what's happening with the actors on stage and what's happening with the audience.
Oh, yes, I like that.
That's the point of it, isn't it? Why I do what I do, to have that moment happening in the theatre.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, that's a really good one. I've gone quite tingly. I've gone a bit goosebumpy with that, because when you're talking about it, I can almost feel that thing. And Julie and I had a slightly lesser moment of that when we premiered our film Scooch for the first time to a whole bunch of strangers. And I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. We wrote this little comedy in lockdown, and it was very silly, Chris. It really was. And we were just a bunch of amateurs. It cost £200 to make, because I roped in a load of friends, say, let's make a film, as you do. And when we showed it, I was so terrified, the sickest I've ever felt. And when we heard the first laugh go from that audience, the relief and seeing people enjoying and really getting behind what you've done, oh, there's nothing like it. So I can imagine that electric, and there's nothing like a theatre anyway when you're watching a fantastic performance. And I can just feel that the air's electric. You're right. It's an amazing to have created something and to see it come alive, and the audience, that feeling. Oh gosh, yes, I can imagine what that would feel like on that scale. Wow. Well, what a lovely note to end the show on.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming to talk to us. It's been such a pleasure.
Pleasure. Lovely to talk to you.
And we wish you all the best with Othello. And
thank you.
Please keep in touch. Please do.
I will do indeed, yes. Lovely to talk to you. Thanks very much.
Okay, bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, everybody.